Are you a designer looking to add a little bit of movement to your work? Or perhaps you're an animator looking to create your own custom designs? Well, either way, this is the short course for you. My name's Jess for Envato Tuts Plus, and I'm a professional graphic and motion designer. My work ranges from creating branding assets for businesses all the way up to complex motion design and animation work. And in this course, I'm going to show you how I work between Adobe Illustrator and After Effects to bring my designs to life. If you're looking to get into motion design but don't quite know where to start, then go ahead and check out Envato Elements, where with a simple, affordable subscription, you get access to millions of digital assets that you can download and use in your projects right away. And this includes great video templates for After Effects, as well as graphic design packages for Illustrator, music, fonts, stock footage, and heaps more. So to learn more about Envato Elements, head to the link in the description below. In this course, I'm going to show you how to design and animate this fun vintage sticker from scratch, to use as a standalone logo or to decorate your branding projects. This is a really common round trip for a motion designer, and I'm looking forward to jumping in and showing you. So let's open up Illustrator and get started. Okay, so this is the final product that we're going to be making today. We've got this cute vintage logo, freshly squeezed, which you could use on a cool branding project. You could replace any fruit you like in the middle or anything else really. It's a pretty variable style. So I think before making any branding projects, I always like to get inspired. And for something like this, there's some great artists out there making work in this style. Steve Gavan is great. You've got Lauren Martin, who does some really cute stuff. Yeye Weller and Adam the Illustrator are great people to look up if you are interested in making more in this style. Make sure you grab a lot of reference from, a few different artists as well, so your work stays original. But yeah, these guys are great, and I usually pull together a bit of a mood board to inspire me. So that's the first step. And then to create this logo, I've picked this color scheme. So quite saturated colors for this one because I wanted it to really stand out. But yeah, let's get into making it. So to start off with, we're just going to create our little orange body. And he's really easy, he's just a circle, which is great. So I'm gonna create a circle and then color pick it to our orange because that's the color that he is. I'm also gonna add a stroke and we're gonna make it 212121, which is just a good gray. It's also this gray here. And we're gonna make our weight for all of our strokes in this 5 points. So it's good to always keep your strokes consistent. I think it really lifts the final design if they're all the same. So yeah, here basically is our little orange boy body, which is a great, easy start. The next thing we're gonna do is create his facial features, which are, again, really easy shapes. So we're gonna start with just a rectangle, like this. This is going to be the back of his eye. And then if you use your direct selection tool, which is this one, you can bring and select the shape. Make sure you click in the middle and not one of the corners. You can then drag these rounded points to round it off. But then one trick I always do is to simplify this shape before you edit it any further, so you've only got 6 points, because if you don't do that, you end up with 2 points at this top bit, which is just super annoying when you're trying to do anything with it. So yeah, always, if you've done this to any kind of pill shape, simplify it down to 6. And then now we've got one nice point that we can manipulate how we like. So yeah, then I reckon to get that nice eye shape, I'm just gonna lengthen the gap between that top bit and these points in the middle. So I'll select just those with direct selection, and then press E to bring up the transform tools, or over here it's this one, and then shrink that down slightly so you've got a bit more space. And then just to sort of even those up, I'm gonna Shift C, which will bring up the, I don't know what they call this, anchor point tool, and then just re-round these corners a little bit. So doing it this way, it's not perfect. You're not getting like the same exact corners on each side because you're doing it kind of by hand. I actually think that gives it a nice end look that's just a little bit less perfect than if you were using geometric shapes only. Cool, so that's the basic shape for his eye. I'm gonna make the center of this white, And then we're just going to duplicate this to make the pupil. So Command C, Command F should paste in front. Yep. And hold Option Shift to scale down. And then we're just gonna flick the color into the center as well. So now we have a nice pupil. All right, now the next thing we're gonna do is create our little star for his eye. So you can just start with a circle. And I think maybe for ease of seeing this, I'll just switch that off. So we've just got the stroke. All right, so we've just made a circle. We're gonna go to Effect and Distort and Transform and Pucker and Bloat. And this is a really easy way to get a star quite quickly. We're gonna drag it towards the pucker side. Probably about 60% is good, 62, that looks all right. Hit OK. And then because we don't really need to adjust this anymore, I'm quite happy with that. I'm just gonna go Object, Expand Appearance, and then we've got this as a path and not an effect. Because the style we're using is quite rounded and friendly, we don't want these pointy corners either. So the first thing I'm gonna do is go over to the stroke panel and let's go show all options, which is just in here. And we're gonna flick the corners off pointy and make sure that the cap is rounded. And that's for all of our lines as well. We'll make sure that's on. And then I think we're also just gonna drag these points in a little bit with our direct selection tool so that it's a bit more friendly again. So we just want this to be white and with no stroke as it is there. So we'll drag this over on top of his eyeball and hold Shift to scale it down while remaining proportional like that. And that's the basic basis of our eye. But we also want him to have a little eyelid. So what I'm gonna do is duplicate this holding Option and Shift. So we have our base layer. And then I'm gonna grab the brush tool and just draw a line across like that. That's kind of like a bit of an eyelid shape down the bottom here. And then we're going to use my favorite tool, which is the Shape Builder tool, which is this one here, and we're gonna separate these shapes. And then all we need is this one. That's our eyelid, and we can just pop it exactly over the top, and we'll make it the same orange as our orange itself. And then we're just gonna bring this to the front. So Command Shift bracket, or you can right click Arrange to bring up those tools, but I would learn the shortcuts, they're very handy. Cool, all right, that's our eye basically. So we'll just bring that over onto our orange and we'll duplicate it to make the second one. And because he's kind of on a bit of an angle, I'm just shifting this other one up slightly. So they're kind of like he's on a bit of an angle. Cool. All right, what else does an orange have on its face? Probably a nose. So this one will be pretty easy to do. We're just gonna use the pen tool and draw kind of a bit of an oblongy shape. Only 3 points, you know, that should basically do it. It's a pretty simple shape. Maybe a little bit more bulbous at the top because we want him to be a bit cute. And make sure, again, that our strokes are set to these ones. Cool, all right, now he's got a nose. And then for the mouth, you could experiment with all kinds of mouth shapes because I think the mouth really helps to show expression, but today we're just gonna do a little puckered mouth because he is freshly squeezed and we wanna get that concept across. So again, with the pen tool, we're just gonna draw a little line like this. We don't need a fill on this one either. And then we're gonna draw a little smile, just little. And then we can take this shape, Command Option Shift to drag it out again. O will be your reverse tool, which is another very handy shortcut to just learn, but it's up here if you need it. And then hold Shift and you can just reverse that one around. And then we'll just move it up into place. Maybe we'll make him a little bit more smiley. If we bring up our tool, we can convert this anchor to also be a curved one. And then adjust them. And that looks pretty good. I'm just gonna group that. So Command G, oh no, oh, what happened? We missed an anchor point. Maybe I should come in a bit closer. Going blind. All right, Command G, group this together. And now he's got a little smile. Cute. Okay, I reckon we need some freckles as well. So these are pretty easy, they're just dots. You could draw them with the brush tool, but I think because we're going to After Effects and After Effects doesn't really like differing stroke types, let's do them with a little circle instead. So we'll just draw one, flip that to the inside so that it's just the fill. We don't need the stroke on this. We'll hold Option again to duplicate these into a nice little 3, and then Option drag as well to put them on the other side. So really easily you can get some cute little freckles on your little orange. And maybe I'll just mess these ones up a bit so they're not quite the same, because we're sort of going for that vintagey hand-drawn style. All right, cool. So that's our face of our orange. He's looking pretty good. The eyes are a bit bigger than what we had, but that's fine. I think that looks good. All right, so he needs a little orange bit as well. What do you call that? Like the stem hole? Anyway, we're gonna do one of those up here, and just the pen tool will do. And this shape, it kind of doesn't really matter what it is. It just kind of has to look a little bit like it's splotted on his top. So something like that will do. Just a full black is all right. And then it might be worth it just to slightly round these corners again too, so we're matching that style. So something like that will work. And we'll also give him a leaf because he's fresh off the tree. So again, with the pen tool, you could, do this leaf any way you like really, but just a few points should do it. Usually I would draw a shape like this, get it somewhere close enough, and then go back with our corner changing tool and just adjust these points. You can also switch back to your direct selection at any point to kind of move individual points and anchors around. So kind of using those two tools to really refine this until you get the kind of shape that you want, which actually that's it. That's the way that I want it to go. That'll do for now, but maybe come back to it. We'll make it green as well and give it the same stroke as everything else. 2, 1, and 5. Cool. I'll make it a bit bigger. Okay, cool. So the next thing we're going to draw is his arm and his hand, and I'll let you in on a bit of a secret. I am terrible at drawing hands. It's been one of the things that I just have never been able to crack. So a good way to work around this, everybody does it, is to find a good reference. So I'm going to use Envato and I'm going to search cartoon hand. And this one I reckon will probably do. So we're going to download that and we can bring it into our project, and you could use this as it is because it's a vector, which is fantastic. Or we can use it like I'm going to, as just drawing reference for the hand we want. So let's get that in, and over in Illustrator, here we go. We've got our hand reference. I am just going to flip this 180 and I'm going to use this hand here as my reference, and I'll just lock it. So Command 2 in Illustrator is lock, and now that's not going to go anywhere. It'll be out of our way. All right, so we're going to use this hand as a reference, and we're just going to adapt it a little bit because obviously the finger is pointing out and we want him to just be full thumbs up. And we're going to keep in mind like the style is a bit different that we're going for here. We want to have that real sort of gloved Mickey Mouse cartoon style. So we're going to make all the fingers pretty bulbous. So I'll start a little bit wider than this, but kind of just gives you a good idea of proportion using a reference like this. So we've given it a nice big thumb, and then we're going to go down on a bit of an angle here to give us a finger. Just move this in a little bit more, and you can, you know, switch between the pen tool, the anchor point selection tool, and the direct selection tool to really have like good control as you're drawing these things. All right, so pretty happy with that. Our gloved hand. I'll just Command G, group all that together so we've got one nice shape, and actually make sure this other side, we'll use the direct selection to just cut through that group, but that's also filled with white now. So if we drag this over, we've got a nice gloved hand. All right, so we'll make this about as big as that, I reckon. And for the arm's really easy. So we're just gonna start it off, I don't know, about there, and just with one big stroke. You could do both sides, but I think it's pretty simple. Turn off the fill, and then we're gonna make this like, maybe like 40, maybe a bit bigger. Maybe let's try 60. Cool, yeah, that looks pretty good to me. Or maybe even a little bit bigger. It's all in the details. We'll drag this in front, so Command Shift bracket again, and just kind of position this until it looks about right. I reckon about there. And then I usually like to keep a copy of this just in case I decide I want to change the arm shape later, because it's much easier to do it when it's in its stroke form. But I'll just move that out of the way, and then we're going to go to Object, Expand, Fill and Stroke, and then we've got a nice solid shape now that isn't a stroke. And I just want the color to be exactly the same as the rest of his body, so I'm going to just color pick using this eyedropper tool, which will give us both the stroke and the fill, which is really handy in this case particularly. Also just going to, we don't need this line here, so if you click your direct selection tool and then select that particular line and hit delete, it will go away, which is also great. We'll chuck this into our nice rounded corners, and that's all looking pretty good. All right. Now we're just going to do some very quick highlights and shadows just to, I don't know, give this a bit more depth. So I'll do these with the brush tool. So starting over here, because he's an orange and, you know, they're kind of lumpy, and because we're about freshly squeezing, I'm going to give him like a bit of a wavy highlight over here. So just draw something like that. And the great thing about the brush tool is if you're like, drawn this line and then you decide, oh, it's actually not quite right, I actually want, you know, maybe one less wave, you can just select the path and then just go over it again, and as long as you're starting and ending on the path that you've already drawn, it'll just fix it up and snap it the way that it was, which is great. So yeah, I reckon something like that. Maybe we'll just have it be a little more up here like I had it, something like that. We want it to be graphic, but also a little bit illustrative, so something like that will do. And I'm just gonna move it out a little bit. All right, great. So that's a good shape. Now we're going to fill it again with this orange, but we don't need a stroke on this one. A good color for a highlight, I think, always starts with the base color that you've got, but we'll just pull the black completely out of it. So in your B column here, pull that out. And in saturation, you can pump that up a little bit. So there's still a bit of color, but you know, it's a lighter tint of what we have. And then we're gonna also make this overlay, so it's a bit luminescent. All right, and that's probably, we might wanna make it sort of, I think I want it positioned slightly around the top a little bit more. So I'm just gonna rotate it using the center of the orange as the rotation point. So if you hit R, that will bring up your rotation, and this little anchor here is where it's going to rotate from. So right now it's here, but we want it to be from about center. So I'm just going to click, and that will change that. And then you can click and drag to rotate the shape that you've made. So that's probably good. And then we obviously want to crop this into just the shape of his base. So I'm going to Command C to copy and Command F to paste in front, and then Command Shift open bracket to bring in the front. And we're going to use the Pathfinder tool to do this bit. So this is a really powerful tool. Sometimes it'll end up over here, but if you can't see it, go to Window, Pathfinder, and you can also bring it out in this little dialog box. So there's lots of options you can do here to keep, to create shapes and unite shapes and build new shapes. It's really good. So we'll select both our objects, making sure that the circle is in front, and then we're going to hit the intersect shape today, which will give us our highlight shape. And classic, this happens every time and I forget about it, but it will take the fill and stroke from that top object. So we just need to change that again. So just go back and do sort of what we had done before and overlay that. So we get the same treatment back. And then we're going to put the leaf on top. All right, and we're also going to do a shadow for under his arm here. So this is going to be pretty important because this arm is going to move like this. He's going to go thumbs up. So the shadow that we make also has to move with this and kind of look natural as he moves his arm. So what might be the easiest is to move it into a position where you might see most of that shadow. And then we're going to use this as our base shape for that shadow. So just Alt drag to duplicate his arm. We're going to flick the color and then put this behind that. So Command bracket to move it behind. And then I'm just going to adjust this slightly and pick up this singular point and drag it to meet that one. So it's coming from under his arm. And then we're just going to square this off slightly using these handles so that it kind of comes a bit straighter down from his arm. And then these ones will, these ones in the shadow will come up just to show where the shadow ends. So that looks all right. Let's just rotate his arm back so you can change that anchor point. We looked before. And then in After Effects, we're going to hide this with a simple matte to his body shape. So if you wanted to finish your illustration, to this standard, you could do that same process I did before where you crop it out. But I think because we're going into animation for now, we'll leave this and do that masking in After Effects. Great, okay, I'm just gonna quickly do some highlights on this leaf too. So we'll do another kind of bulby shape up here, and exact same process as before, just making it that green, taking the black out of it, and making sure it's on overlay. And then, you can come in and do a bit of refining to make sure that it's not hitting that line. But because it's on overlay, you can't really tell. No one's going to see it up that close. All right. Kind of want it to match the leaf as well. Cool, and we'll just give it a little shadow on this far side of it. So I'm just going to use the brush tool again. And something like that might be a good start. Color pick this because we want it to just be that. And then we're going to bring these shapes in front. So there you go. It's just subtle, kind of a little bit of extra thickness really on this line. Smoothly go into the line that we've got. There we go. Cool. All right, so there's our character pretty much done. Yep, that looks pretty good. Cool. All right, so here's our character. I'm pretty happy with that arm, so we can probably just say goodbye to that. Now we're going to do the rest of the sticker around him. So draw another circle, which is bigger than him, and we're going to make it this nice purple color. And just for ease, we'll group all of him together, Command G, and then I'm going to drag him on top just so we have another version, Command Shift bracket to bring him to the front. Cool, all right, and we probably want about that much space. And now we're going to use some fonts. So what we're going to do first is Command C, Command V this circle, And just so we can see it really easily, I will make it a red line. And we're going to center this to this circle until we get about that big. And we're going to use our type on a path tool, which is up here. If you hold down, you can select this one, type on a path, and then you go over to your path, and when it highlights blue, you can click and it will put the text around that circle for you. So we're going to have one freshly is the first word we're going to do. So we'll select that, or you can just Command A, select all of that. All right, so I'm going to use a font called Standy Bold, which you can find on Envato, and there'll be a link in the description below as to where you can find this one. But, you know, lots of fonts you could use for this. Just try and find something nice and vintage. It's a good way to go. All right, so there's our font. I'm just going to also give it about 70 on its kerning, just so, you know, with these bold fonts, it's a little bit easier to read, especially on the circle like this. And I'm also just going to rotate it up until it looks all right. And then we need squeezed as well. So Alt, I'll just drag this out, Alt Shift to drag and copy, and we'll write, squeezed in here. But as you can see, this is not going to work because it'll be upside down, which is very annoying. So the way that you flip it is you get your direct selection tool and you find this one. So these ones are your kind of flow-on things. So if you wanted to add another circle, you could click those, but actually generally they're kind of unhelpful. So this one is the one you want, and you can just flip that over, and then that will bring your text to the inside. And if you bring that over now and select our freshly, and then double select it to have this be our hero anchor, and then you can kind of make sure that they're aligned that way. It's a bit too small, the radius of that, because it's taking it off this one. So usually what I do is just make sure it's all lined up to the center, and then scale it, holding Alt and Shift until that blue line hits the top of the text that you're wanting to match. And then we will just pick that text again to make sure it's the right size. And then you can just rotate it till it looks center. All right, so we've got our text. I'm just gonna make this a little bit bigger, maybe like that's good. And then just rotate these into place. And actually, I think, you know, a bit more a dynamic sticker. Let's off center the rotation of these. So that looks pretty cool to me. I'm gonna make them white as well. Lovely, okay. I'm just gonna ungroup our little orange because now he's in the right spot, and bring his arm in front of the text. So just selecting it all and Command Shift bracket again. And yeah, we're basically there. So we're just gonna very quickly now make our little side oranges. And this is a really easy peasy illustration to do because it's all just basic shapes. So we're gonna start with our orange circle again, and then select just this point on here with our direct selection tool and delete that because we just want a semicircle. And then we're going to close this shape. So if you hover with your pen tool and you get this little divider line, then it knows that you're talking about that anchor point and you want to close it. And the circle means the shape is going to be closed, which is what we just did. And then we're going to round these corners off a little bit just to match our style as well. So that's our basic slice shape. Then we're going to go up to Object and go to Path. Offset path is what we want, which is going to give us the same path again, just scaled up. So sometimes it's a bit better than scaling because it'll keep the same like ratios on the corners, rather than scaling will kind of distort it. So sometimes this is a better way to cut things into pieces. Cool, so offset 10, that looks all right. Just hit OK. And then this middle shape is going to be our inside wedge bits. So I'm just going to color pick the same color as here so that it matches our highlights. And then to get our little wedges, I'm going to use the pen tool and just draw a straight line up the center of this shape. And I'll just make this something visible. And it's not quite center, so I'll just select both of these and double select the back one to center that. And then we're just going to rotate this from this bottom point. So again, press R for rotate, select the bottom anchor with your rotate so your anchor's down there, and then we're going to hold Alt Shift, and I'm just going to do this by eye as well. And if you're holding, oops, and then if we go back here and holding Alt till we get, you know, some nice quarters in our wedges like that. And then we're going to select all of these and use again our shape builder tool to separate these shapes out. And then we'll delete these bits, we don't need them. And so now, oh yeah, classic, we've forgotten that it changes our colors, so we'll just change that back. And then we're going to do the same offset path thing again to give these a bit more space. So object, path, offset path. And this time we want to go negative because we want them to go in. So we'll go negative, maybe 3. And if you click off, it'll show you what it looks like. So that looks pretty good to me. Hit OK. And then we can just delete these back ones. And that's our little wedge. So Command G that, group it all together. And then we can bring it in and maybe we'll put it on a bit of an angle and copy it over here. All right. How's that looking? Maybe a bit bigger. All right, I'm gonna drag this off the artboard so we can see better here, but we're going to also just give this an outline using that same offset path technique again. There's plenty of ways you could do this, but I think offset path sometimes is the easiest because then it's a shape, it's not just a stroke as well. So there's our little outside line, which I've just made white to be the edge of our sticker. All right, and now we're gonna give it the texture, which is our last design step. So I've got this texture from Envato, which is just a poster stick texture. And I'm just going to drag out, Alt drag the base, the very base of our sticker on top of that. And we're just gonna make a clipping mask. So if you select both, you can do it up here under Object, Clipping Mask Make, or Command 7, which is another very handy shortcut. And then we're just gonna bring it on top, so you might select that back one, double select it again, and center it, and then bring it to the front using Command Shift Bracket. And we're going to multiply that as well. And there's our sticker, all done. Okay, so we're ready to bring this into After Effects, and usually I would use this great plugin called Overlord, which you can go check out. It makes this process a lot simpler, but I'm gonna show you how we can do it without any plugins. So the most important thing is that we separate this illustration onto some different layers. And for ease as well, we're going to use this artboard here. So if you wanna create a new artboard, you can go to Document Setup, Edit Artboards, and select this one. And we're just gonna Alt Shift to copy this artboard as well. So this one's exactly 1080 by 1080, which is a nice Instagram size, and will be the exact same artboard size that we make in After Effects. So that everything comes over in the right spot, we'll just make sure it's the same artboard. All right, so there's our new sticker. And we're gonna, first off, this multiply effect, we might just remake this in After Effects, I think, but we'll put it onto a different layer anyway, and we'll call it paper texture. Then the text, I think we can outline this because I'm pretty happy with it. We don't need to edit it when we're in After Effects, and there's a whole other way that you might actually have to make this text come over in a circle in After Effects, which I don't want to have to worry about today. So I'm going to expand this, or you can go, it's actually object type, create outlines, or Command Shift O. And then these are just raw shapes now, which is fabulous. So I'm going to pull that onto a different layer and call this type. And then we'll grab our little orange slices and we'll call these oranges. All right, well, let's call them orange slice. Then we want his arm to be one layer. So that can go onto a new layer and we'll call it arm. And then we can put his freckles and his mouth and his nose we'll do on a new layer, and we'll call this face. And the leaf head. So the leaf we put on a different layer because I reckon it'd be cute to have him, you know, his little rotate of his leaf there. So that needs to be on its own layer. The face I'm not really planning to move, so they're good together, but the arm we definitely want to move, and the eyes I think we're going to have these do a little rotate and him sort of have his eyelids come up. So we want them to be separate from the rest of his body. I'm also going to I'll put his body on a new layer, and on that layer I think we can also have this, which is probably just going to move with his base, so we'll put that there. And the highlight we'll keep on a new layer because we might want him to rotate, but the angle of the light is not going to change if he rotates, so that needs to be on a separate layer too. So let's just bring that back up. So this is orange base and this is highlight. All right, and then we just need to grab his eyes, so let me switch that off. And actually I'm gonna just delete the whole second eye because we're gonna do this with a pre-comp in After Effects, and it'll be much easier just to duplicate the eye after it's animated. So we'll just drag the eye elements onto a new layer, but we actually wanna have this broken up into more parts. So I'm gonna put the pupil on its own layer. Basically everything that you want to move has to be on its own layer. And then we'll put, this is the eyelid, and this is the eye back. And then on the eye back somewhere is gonna be it's white as well, which makes it hard to see, but our star. So we've got the star, we've got the pupil, we've got the eyelid, and we've got the eye back. So we'll make a really simple eye rig for that when we get into After Effects using that piece. All right, and the only last thing I want to do probably is flip the arm on top of that type there. And oh, the other last thing, actually no, that's not the last thing, the shadow. So we'll just put that on its own layer as well. Shadow. Okay, and the last thing we need to do is just make sure this is the only artboard in the comp. So I'm just gonna go through and delete this artboard and this artboard. And it shouldn't really matter, but I'm just gonna delete all this stuff as well, just so it's nice and clean. All right, so we've saved that. We have saved that, and we're gonna jump into After Effects now. Okay, so welcome to After Effects, my favorite program. So we're going to create a new composition that matches our artboard in Illustrator. So let's just call this freshly squeezed VO1. Cool, so we're just going to adapt this to be 1080 by 1080 to match that artboard size. 25 frames a second is fine for what we're doing today, and about 5 seconds is good too. So you just select those and hit OK, and we've got our artboard. So to import our file, we can just go File, Import. file, or you can just drop and drag it in. Navigate to where you saved your file. Here he is. These you don't really have to play with. There'll be another dialog box just now when I click open that I usually change the settings in. So import kind as composition is good because we want all of our layers. If we imported it as footage, it would import it as one flat object, which is not very helpful. And that's all grayed out, so that's fine. Footage dimensions, layer size, that's fine because our document and layer size are the same because we've made it all 1080. So that's okay. All right, so here is it's actually made us a brand new comp, which is fine. Because it's brought in the comp and it's exactly the right sizes that we need. We actually don't need this other comp that we made before, but you know how to make one if you do. So let's just delete this comp and we'll just work in this one that we've got already. Okay, so our paper texture, as you can see, it's masked, which is great, but it hasn't got the multiply effect that we need anymore. So that's quite easy to replicate in After Effects. If you come down to mode, you've got all your color blending modes that you would normally have in any other program, which is great. So we'll just put that back onto multiply. So the first thing we're going to do is parent some things together. So we have to animate less, which is great. So our arm, the other thing we probably want to do as we parent is make sure that our anchor points are in the right spot, because right now, if you can press, if we drop down this menu and bring up our tools, we're rotating from the middle of his arm, which is not where arms rotate from. So we're just gonna use this, it's called the pan behind tool or the anchor point tool. And we're just gonna drag this point up to where we want it to rotate from. And it will scale and move and everything from this position now. It's not just rotate. So that's in the right spot there. And then we're gonna parent the arm to the orange base, which is his body. So if we move this around, that's his body there. The next thing we're gonna do is parent the type to the back of this sticker, because we're gonna add a bit of rotation movement to the orange and to the text and these orange slices as well, just to give it a bit of dynamic easing. So the type actually and the orange slices can all connect to the sticker background, so that now if we hit R on our keyboard to bring up rotation, that's going to all move together nicely. The next thing we've got here is the face, so that can just connect to the orange base, which is his body. The leaf, the same, but we're going to, with the leaf, we want this to rotate too, and so we're going to use that same pan behind tool just to adjust it to where the leaf would probably rotate from, which is about there. Our highlight also has lost its blending mode, so we're just going to make this overlay like it was in Illustrator, and that's done that, which is good. And we will parent this one as well to the orange base, like so. All right, then what we're going to do with the eye is a little bit different. We're going to pre-compose the eye and do our animation in a separate composition. So you can think of comps kind of like artboards. It's a good way of separating them out and keeping your layer stack neat so you can focus exactly on what it is you're trying to animate. So if we select all of the parts of his eye, so the star, the eyelid, the pupil, and the eye back, and right click to pre-compose, we're gonna get this little dialog box, which we're gonna name it eye. You would just leave it as these settings. I think in this case it's pretty simple, this one. So now our eye is all together in this one layer, and if we double click into it, we get just the eye by itself, which is exactly what we want. So for this piece of animation, we're going to have his eye, this little star, rotate, and we're going to have him look up and have his eyelid sort of move up as well for a nice little bit of character animation. So the star is really easy. If you press R on your keyboard to bring up rotation, we're just going to give this a tiny expression, which is a very handy one. So if you press Alt and hit the rotation stopwatch, you'll bring up the expression panel. And all it is time, asterisk, maybe like 100. And if we play that, it's just going to keep going at 100 times. I'm not quite sure what the math is here, but it works. And the bigger the number, the faster it will turn, the smaller number, the slower it will turn. So maybe 200 is probably good here. So there you go. And then we don't have to worry about setting any keyframes at all. It's just gonna do it. And now we want to have his eyelid come up so that he's kind of squinting as the animation starts. So we're gonna do this with position. So P on the keyboard to bring up position. And we're gonna set a keyframe. So if you just click the stopwatch without pressing anything else, you'll set a keyframe here, which you can zoom in on down here and see exactly what frames we're working with. So yeah, I reckon maybe about 15 frames in, we can set another keyframe, and that's our final resting spot. And then if we go back to the start and then drag this down, or you can just, pull it around wherever you want here, that's probably about, where we want it, off his eye. So that's probably all right, but maybe it's a little bit slow and a little bit flat. So make it a bit faster, and then we're also going to add some easing to these keyframes. So easing basically changes the velocity of the speed in which an animation moves. So we are going to just right click and go keyframe assistant easy ease, which will turn both of these into easy ease keyframes. And if we look at this in the graph, which is here, you can see what it looks like. You've got a nice curve now at the start and the end, so it's slow to start and then slow to end, unlike what we had before, which was a straight line, as you can see there. So let's just do that again, easy ease. You can also do it down here in the graph editor. So we've got a slow start and a slow end, which maybe could still be a bit faster. So what I might do so that we can adjust this graph a little easier is separate the dimensions. So you can right click, separate dimensions here. X position is this way, which we're not animating right now, so we don't need that one. I'm just going to click it off. But Y, now we've got handles here, which we can use to adjust the easing of this particular movement. And because we don't really need to have the slow start here, we just kind of want the slow in, I'm going to make this a really steep curve so that it's kind of fast at the beginning and then slows in. So something like that, maybe a little bit faster again, because a blink is pretty fast. But of course, what good is an eyelid if it's on the outside of your eye? So we need to mat this to the back of this eye layer. And Illustrator layers are sometimes a bit hard to work with, so we're going to make shape layers out of this eye as well. So if you right click and then go to create shapes from vector layer, it will give us the exact same shape, just editable in After Effects now, which is really handy for lots of other reasons as well, other than just this particular scenario. And we're also going to do it with the eye back as well. There we go. And then we can just delete these layers. We don't need them anymore. All right, so then you're going to go to your effects panel, which is over here. Or if you can't find it, it'll be in Window, Effects and Presets to bring that up. And type in Set Matte, which is the effect we're going to then drag on to the eyelid. And then basically what this does is tell us from another layer in our composition when you want to see this layer and when you don't. So we're going to go up here and select our matte layer to be the eye back, which will then, as you can see, easily hide and reveal that when it's overlapping with this eye back layer, which is really good. But as you can see, it's like not really bringing the stroke with it. So we're just going to duplicate the eye back outlines and drag that to the top of our stack, and then just remove its fill. So if you go up here and you press the blue fill, you get all the different fill options, so gradient, colors and that kind of thing. But we don't want any, so we're just going to hit no and hit OK. And now we've got a nice matte with our eye working pretty nicely. I think for realism, when you squint, your pupil is going to move too. So we'll just do the same position animation on the pupil too, where that'll be our end state. At the start, we're just going to have it, be a bit lower like that. And then the easing, we'll just make that the same as the other one. So separate the dimensions here off the X and the Y. There's another great plugin that I often use called Ease Copy, which lets you copy the exact same ease values. There we go. And lastly, we're going to parent the star to the pupil as well, so that the position of the star will follow the pupil too. Okay, how's that for an eye? Go back into our animation. Tee-hee. Cool. All right, so let's duplicate that eye. So we've got two, as all oranges do. And the face is in front, so that's good because we don't want his little, maybe a bit more overlap with the nose looks good. And maybe we'll bring this slightly closer together. Cute. All right, how's that? Looking pretty good? Cool. All right, now let's add some rotation for the sort of animation in of this sticker. So we're just going to get the sticker ground, which is this background layer, and parented to that, remember, is our type and our little orange slices. And we're going to make this like maybe negative 30, I reckon, but doesn't really matter. Animation is all about what you feel. And then about 10 frames in, we're going to make this 0. So it's back to normal. And then ease-wise, if we go to the graph editor, add some ease to this. I think same as our eyes, we want a fast in and a slow stop. Yeah, so it's kind of like whipping in is the movement we want. And then we're going to get the orange base, which is our orange guy, and we're going to rotate him as well. Maybe, oh, we've forgotten to parent some things. The eyes, because we just did them. Parent them as well to your orange base. Yeah, that looks all right. I will explain this messy shadow in a second. All right, so maybe a little bit less, so negative 20 is good because we want this to move slightly less than the outside, and we'll give it the same easing as well. Something similar. Cool. I reckon actually this back one can be more. Maybe let's do negative 50 so there's more discrepancy. And you can also extend the length by a couple of frames of the orange so he lands slightly later. Pew! Maybe a little bit less. Maybe I went too crazy. Yeah, that's nice. Cool. All right, now this arm shadow, let's deal with that. I think we will parent it to the arm because when he moves his arm, we want the shadow to kind of move with him as well. But obviously we want it to be stuck behind this circle. So we will, I think here, let's use a track matte just for something else. So we're going to duplicate this orange base by pressing Command D. So you've got the exact same back that we want him to be masked by. Okay, with this new update of After Effects, we can now have a track matte anywhere we like. So you can use it the very similar way to parenting, where you select this pick whip and, oh, it's the other way around, isn't it? We want the shadow to be track matted by our base, which has just happened there. And you can flip it to be inverted or not inverted with these little toggles, which is very handy. If you're using an old version of After Effects, it just has to be the layer on top, and then you use the same system here. So that's pretty great. If this isn't showing up, just click this top bar and you'll get these columns and you can turn it on. It is the modes one, is the one you're looking for there. Lovely. All right, so we've got a little bit of rotation. We've got our shadow matted. I think all he needs now is maybe a little bit more rotation on his arm to give a big thumbs up, and maybe his little leaf. So we've moved the anchor point for our arm, so it's ready for us to animate. And we're going to animate both the rotation and the position. So R and P on your keyboard. And I might drag these keyframes back to almost about where the rotation is going to end, and we'll go, yeah, maybe another 5 or so frames up. We're going to rotate it. When you give a thumbs up, you kind of go out and then up and then settle back down. So we need basically 3, maybe 4 keyframes, let's see. So we're going to go down first by, let's say 10, and then another 5 keyframes. Let's go up to, I don't know, yeah, -13, and then down again back to 0. And then it's nice to have an offset of 2 factors, like position and rotation often work really well together. So position-wise, when he goes down, we might have the arm go down slightly and maybe a little bit to the right. And then when he goes up, we'll have the arm come up and then back to the same keyframe that we had originally. So you can just copy and paste that in keyframe there. And then we'll select all of these, select them in the graph editor and easy ease them. And let's just look what that looks like. Whoa. Cool. All right, it's looking somewhere. I reckon he's probably just got a bit too much sauce over here on this rotation. So we'll bring that down. Maybe it's more like -7. And the other thing we're going to do is just offset these position keyframes. So if you select them all, and you can press Alt and arrow keys on your keyboard to do this really fast, or you can just drag them, but about a frame different just gives that animation a little bit more character, I think is what it is. It's, yeah, cool. So he's going great. Yoo-hoo. All right, cool. Let's just do a little bit on the leaf. We probably want it to be, as he's coming in, it can settle. So he's rotating this way, so we probably want it to start back here with the rotation at a negative. So maybe it's up here. Let's do -15. And then as it lands, we want this to come a bit further down than 0, so maybe 9, and then it's going to settle at 0. So again, with some nice easing, let's just see what that looks like at a basic. Woo! I reckon it could probably be a bit tighter. Maybe this final resting is quite slow, and we can bring back the keyframe a little bit more, just so it matches the ease of the rotation, because it's quite a slow. And we can probably also, if you want to change the value of anything, you can move these up and down the graph. So that's obviously 10 degrees in rotation, but if we want it to be more like 5, just move that down. And I might move this up so it's just a bit subtler. There we go. Not so crazy of a fringe flip. All right, so usually at this point I spend a lot of time watching this over and over and over again until I'm happy with it, and I'll make very small tweaks to the animation, because it really is about watching it over and over and over again sometimes to get it exactly right. So I've just tweaked this a little bit more, mainly just reducing the amount of animation on his arm. I think I always over animate and then I have to walk myself back. And then the last thing we want to do before we do a cool little sticker animation is just parent this paper texture that we have on top to our sticker ground, which is our main rotation. So now that will move with our sticker. Cool. All right. So now we're just going to do that last peel animation, which is very easy and with just one effect. But we need to have all of these elements pre-composed to do that. So you could do what we did before and select them all and right click and pre-compose and everything. Or you can just grab your comp up here that you want to pre-compose if you're using all the layers, and just drag it into this comp button here. And then you'll have the exact comp that you have with all of your layers, but in a pre-composition. The only thing we don't want in this pre-comp actually is this background. So I'm just going to Command X to cut it, and I'm going to put it in here, paste it in there. So now we've got our background and we've got our freshly squeezed sticker all by itself. Okay, so we found page turn in our effects panel, and we're going to drop that onto our main comp here in any way you like. You can drop it onto there, you can drop it onto here, plenty of options. And then as you can see, we've got a lot of things to play around with here. We've got the fold position. So if you can't find it, you can press this, but it's this little dot here as well. And you can pull this around to show you where it's going to fold from. You can change which corner you want it to fold from. So, you know, top left or top right. I think I prefer top right most of the time. So like that. You can change the fold radius, which is sort of how round it looks or how flat it looks. But I think most of these settings are all fine. I would just like to give it a back page so that we don't see the sticker on both sides, because at the moment it's rendering the front and back page as the same layer, which is not what we want. So I'm just going to make a circle. Let me just reset this so it's flat. Draw a circle with your shape tool up here. Make sure you're deselected off all the other layers so that it's going to draw a shape. And we want it to be about the same size as our sticker here. So that looks pretty good. And I'll just call this sticker back. Oops, if I can type properly, sticker back. And I'm just going to hide it because we actually don't need to see it. We just need to have it. So select back onto our layer. And let me just move this so we can see. If you go to your back page layer here and click sticker back, now we've got our white there, which is awesome. But I want the opacity to be 100 instead of 80 because we're dealing with an opaque sticker here. All right, cool. So that's our sticker. Let's give it a little bit of animation on this fold position. So you can press the stopwatch to turn it on up here, and then you on your keyboard will open any active keyframes, which is a very, very handy shortcut. You again will close it, so that's a good one to know. So let's go maybe about 10 frames in, just as it lands, I think is when we want the peel to finish too. So we'll select that as our end state. Back to the first one, and let's pull it right off. And then we'll give this again ease. Whoa, that's pretty fast. Maybe we'll slow that down a little bit. Cool. Let's do the scale as well. So we're gonna start it a little bit bigger than it ends, and we'll give this the same easing too, where it's a bit fast in, slow out. All right, that's looking pretty good, but I think we're missing quite a bit of that cool animation that we did at the start, aren't we? So let's just do a quick time remap on this pre-comp layer. So we're gonna right click it and go enable time remapping. And then we're just gonna shift this forward a few frames and our keyframes back, and then drag that start of the layer out. Because this basically, if I turn off this page turn effect, it's just still waiting for this keyframe to hit, and then it'll play the animation that we have from that first frame. So it's a good way if you just need to extend it rather than going in. You could go in and just move them all across and do it that way, but sometimes the time remap is a handy little trick to do that a bit quicker. So let's turn our page turn back on again and see what this looks like now. Oh yeah. Cool. I'm just gonna, we love an offset. Let's offset the scale a little bit. Happy with that. And then because this is a vintage logo and, we like vintage effects, let's add an adjustment layer to the top of all of this, and we're going to put a posterize time on top of this, which allows us to control the frame rate separately. So, in this project, you probably could just set the frame rate of this comp to 12.5, but you kind of get a bit more control with the posterize time, and you can still export this comp then at 25 frames per second for Instagram or something like that. So yeah, posterize time kind of keeps it as an effect rather than the actual frame rate. So let's make this 12.5. And now we're only seeing, every 12.5 frames rather than the full 25, which gives us this kind of sweet vintage look. And that's it. So there we go. We've just seen how easily we can create a sticker in Illustrator, making sure that we're thinking about how we layer our design, knowing that we're going to be animating it down the line. And then we saw how simple it is to bring it over to After Effects to give it some real zest. I hope you enjoyed this course. Let me know in the comments what kind of work you're doing, and if you have any tips or tricks for how to do that round trip from Illustrator to After Effects. I'd love to hear about what you're working on. Till next time, stay fresh.